my name is Brooke from Teacher of the Rainbow, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to make these pop-up note dispensers. This is the teacher-made eraser design, but today we're going to be making a notebook paper one. Before I get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and share it. All the engagement helps. Everything that I'm going to be using today in this tutorial will be linked in the description, so let's get started. These pop-up note dispensers are available on my website. They come in a pack of 6 and come in a white box like this, so you can put your logo sticker on it if you choose. So it comes in a box, in a plastic bag. I always just toss the plastic bag because it's not necessary and it's time consuming to put them back in the bag. Now, to get these pop-up note dispensers off, you have to squeeze the black base and pop it off one side at a time. If you force it off or if you bend it back, you're going to break the black prongs that are on it and you're going to damage it, and it's not going to be any good. I send instructions with a QR code on how to remove the cover from the base so that if it breaks or gets damaged, I can say that the instructions were included on how to take it off. But to make it just a smidge easier, I take 220 grit sandpaper and I lightly sand the prongs just a bit so that it comes off a little bit easier. I have strong hands, so it's not difficult for me, but not everybody has bigger, stronger hands to be able to remove the cover. So if you just sand those prongs just a smidge, it comes off a little bit easier, and you won't have issues with messing up the prongs or having your customers mess up the prongs. So in the meantime, you don't need this black base, so just go ahead and put it in a box and set the box to the side. This cover is acrylic and it is smooth, but we do want to rough it up a little bit so that things adhere to it a little bit better. So take that 220 grit sandpaper again and sand that topper. Make sure you're getting all the parts. It doesn't have to be super sanded. Just do a once over on it real quick. Now that it's sanded, you can see that it's a little scratched up and things are going to adhere to it a lot better. Now you need to spray paint your cover. I like to use a matte spray paint. Specifically ColorShot, because it dries so fast you can literally touch your project within minutes. When you're spray painting, make sure you don't spray too much at one time and just go quick side to side bursts. Then also it's very important to make sure you get all 4 sides of the note dispenser, because if you don't, it's going to look kind of weird once you're finished with your project. The glitter that I use is a custom mix that I've made from Peachy Olive Glitters, which is a combination of Starlight and Jasmine. I literally take the Starlight and just sprinkle in a teensy bit of this Jasmine to give it those blue specks that notebook paper has. Before you get started, go ahead and grab yourself a Q-tip so that you can use that to clean out the prong holes. The UV resin that I use is from CCDIY. It's nice and shiny and does not stay tacky once cured. All right, we're going to go ahead and apply our UV resin. Don't put a lot when you're adhering your glitter. You don't need a lot. You're just trying to adhere your glitter. And not to mention that when you put too much, it's going to be all drippy and goopy and fall into your prong holes, and then you're going to have issues putting your cover back on your base. So just put a small amount and don't push the UV resin in the holes. Push it away from the holes and just slide your finger next to it, as you can see that I'm doing. If you have any UV resin that gets into the prong holes, just use your Q-tip and remove it with your Q-tip. When you're applying your glitter, I hold on to the sides of the cover and apply my glitter on one half of the cover. And then once I have the glitter on the half of it, I tap off the excess and spin it around and put the glitter on the other side and do the same thing. Tap off the excess, and then you can go ahead and put it under your UV light. This will cure in less than 2 minutes. Once it's done curing, you can take it out from under your UV light and apply your next layer of UV resin. Your next layer can be a little bit more generous, but you still don't want to go overboard, because it's really important that you not get UV resin into those prong holes. Even if you clean it out with a Q-tip, it can be a little bit pesky once it's cured, because you think that you've cleaned it all out, but you haven't. So just be careful when you're putting this next layer of UV resin on. Once you're done spreading your UV resin, go ahead and use your Q-tip and just double check and make sure that you didn't have any overspill in those prong holes. And then you can put it under your UV light to cure. Now that it's done curing, before we put another layer of UV resin on there, we want to use our 220 grit sandpaper so that we can sand down any rough spots before adding any more UV resin. So go ahead and give it a once over with your 220 grit sandpaper. Brush off your excess dust from sanding, and then you can apply your next layer of UV resin. Again, you can be a little bit more generous with this layer. Just be careful not to get it into the prong holes, like I stated before. I use my torch to level off the UV resin and get rid of any bubbles. And then once that's done, you can go ahead and put it back under your UV light. Now that it's cured and smooth, we can go ahead and add our trim for the notebook paper. The vinyl that I use is linked in the description, and I just cut the strips and dot with my Cricut machine. So that your lines are even and it doesn't look all crooked and jankety, you want to start out with your first piece of trim on the center, and then you're going to build off of that. So go ahead and place your first piece of trim right down the center as even as possible, and then trim the ends off, and then trim out the piece that's in the center hole. To build your notebook paper line so that everything is even on the top and bottom, I use a piece of washi tape to guide my trim. So I just use the washi tape and place it below that first line, and then add the trim underneath that, and then continue on using the same process. As long as you put your first piece on straight and centered and then build off of that with your guide tape, everything should come out good. For one end of your pop-up note dispenser, you're going to want to leave it wider than the bottom, because in actuality, notebook paper on the top is a bigger section because that's where you would put the name. Now that your horizontal lines are good, you're going to go ahead and add the vertical red line from the notebook paper. Go ahead and put it on there, and then trim out the middle section, trim out the top and bottom. Moving on to your notebook paper holes for the sides of your paper. I put mine in the center, and then 2 above that and 2 below that so that it looks even. And now your trim is done. Now that your trim is done, you can add a name if you want to do that. I just use regular permanent black vinyl and put it on there, and then peel off the transfer tape. Now you're finally ready for your last layer of UV resin. You can add a generous layer of UV resin onto your cover. Just again, make sure that you're not getting it into any of the peg holes. Once you're done, make sure you use your Q-tip and get out any UV resin that has fallen into the peg holes. And then I take my torch and I go over it so that the UV resin is level and there are no bubbles, and then put it under my light to cure. For these note dispensers to work properly, you have to buy the pop-up note version of Post-it notes. They can be found on Amazon, Walmart, Staples, anywhere you can find Post-it notes. They have a pop-up version of it. To put the pop-up notes in, I just push them down, and that little round circle is a spring. You put the note through the hole and then push down on one end first and then the other end to clip it in. To remove the cover without damaging it, again, you have to squeeze the black base, pull off one side, and then just wiggle off the other side, and it comes off no problem. If you force it or bend it back, you're going to break the pegs and it's going to no longer function. When I ship off my note dispensers, I put them back in the white box that it came in, and I also include instructions with QR codes that people can scan to see how to properly remove the cover so that they don't damage it. And finally, the reason why I like this box that is white and doesn't have any print on it, I can add my own logo sticker on it so that it looks really official. Alrighty, crafters, that's it for today. I hope that tutorial helps. If you're unsure about anything or if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And don't forget, all the items that I used today in the tutorial are linked in the description, as well as discount codes and affiliate links. Happy crafting!